first statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party is astonished and deeply concerned over certain horrendous decisions adopted by the Guyana Elections Commission. Firstly, is GECOM's decision to share unsolicited its database, including confidential details of registrants, with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. This is unprecedented in the history of the electoral process in Guyana and since the establishment of the Guyana Elections Commission. The justification provided by GECOM's chairman, Steve Sturge-Bally, and the representatives of the APNU-AFC are spurious and creates grounds for suspicion. Electoral skullduggery facilitated by the APNU-AFC and Mr. Sturge-Bally is once again in the making. The use of linkages between GECOM's and the Ministry of Education's respective public relations programs to inveigle GECOM to share unsolicited its database with the Ministry of Education is fraught with unimaginable implications for free and fair elections in Guyana. Further, the justification to share GECOM's database with the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security in order for that ministry to rectify the names and addresses of pensioners, as well as to assist in deleting names of pensioners, smacks of deep suspicion that GECOM's database could be used for other sinister electoral purposes. In any event, sharing of GECOM's database with either of these two ministries is unnecessary and uncalled for, since these two ministries have the institutional capacity to rectify their respective institutional deficiencies. The party is of the strong view that the nation must be consulted in respect to the unsolicited release of confidential personal data of citizens captured in the National Register of Registrants. The government agencies and departments, a practice that has no precedent in Guyana. The PPP views as absolutely necessary the need to validate the legality of GECOM sharing its database with government agencies such as the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. Second, the decision by GECOM to accept source documents in the form of late registration birth certificates presented to registration offices by applicants who are primarily middle-aged persons. The PPP views this decision as dripping with suspicion and recalls the strong criticisms expressed by the party in respect to the efficacy of a Department of Citizenship under the Ministry of the Presidency, which many view as part of the rigging machinery established primarily to issue birth certificates to underage persons as well as to middle-aged persons, as is currently being done. The PPP denounces this practice and demands an immediate halt to this electoral travesty, which is laying the basis for a padded voters list favorable to the APNU-AFC. The party takes this opportunity to alert both the donor and diplomatic communities to these to these sordid and unsavory developments. The third decision by GECOM, which the PPP wishes to make public, is the breach of an obligation made by the chairman of GECOM at a meeting held with the PPP delegation on April 21st, 2016. At that meeting, GECOM's chairman personally and exclusively committed to providing written answers to a number of questions raised by the General Secretary of the party. The party is reliably informed that Mr. Serge Bali has, quote, reconsidered his commitment and did not see the necessity to write the PPPC, end of quote. This shameless decision by Serge Bali flies in the face of transparency and is nothing but a clear manifestation of contemptuousness and disrespect towards the PPP, a major stakeholder in the electoral process in this country. The PPP wishes to make it clear that in a statement issued on April 21st, 2016, following its meeting with GECOM, the party avoided any reference whatsoever to those matters which Mr. Serge Bali had undertaken to respond to in writing. Mr. Serge Bali's lack of scruples in this particular matter strengthens the suspicion of the PPP about his Bollers-type anti-PPP role in the May 2015 general and regional elections and reveals his hands to be dirty with fraud. The PPP will continue to expose Mr. Serge Bali's cohabitation with his APNU AFC commissioners to deny the supporters of the PPP their legitimate right to free and fair elections. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party is opposed to the growing militarization of the state and government apparatus in Guyana. This tendency is increasingly manifesting itself under the Granger administration. Coupled with this development is the steady but rapid progression of our country in the direction of a police state. This dangerous and unwelcome development has its historical antecedents in the Barnum era, of which Mr. Granger is a product. The Granger administration has a penchant for placing retired and serving military officers in government agencies and departments and or to head commissions of inquiries into one incident after another. This practice has become so blatant that one letter writer recently posed the question whether, quote, being an officer or having once been an officer in the Guyana Defense Force offer a distinct advantage over the ordinary mortal of this country, or is being an officer or having been an officer now is a prerequisite for certain state appointments, end of quote. Effectively, what the Granger pro-militaristic administration has done by virtue of this practice is to demonstrate its distrust for civilians, albeit qualified to perform such functions in contradistinction to military personnel. Secondly, by proceeding in that direction, the APNU has outfoxed the AFC by placing its military confederates in key and critical positions, knowing that the AFC would be more inclined to nominate civilians to the said positions, which the APNU has absolutely no interest in doing. The PPP is of the view that the rise of the APNU-AFC police state will inexorably result in the decline of freedoms in Guyana. Under the PPPC, Guyanese abided by the rule of law, and successive PPPC administrations were held accountable for their actions. With the advent of the APNU-AFC to office, our country is gradually evolving into a police state where justice has become one-sided. An urban middle-class bureaucratic elite runs the show. Accountability and transparency in government is a mockery. The Guyana Police Force is gradually being transformed into an appendage of the military. Surveillance of persons of interest, POIs, is rampant. Privacy is constantly being invaded and eroded, and the law is little more than a tool for the Granger administration to browbeat Guyanese into compliance. Meanwhile, the government's propaganda machinery is being used to fool the people about heaven on earth through a good life. The situation is reminiscent of the once dreaded PNC police state that is responsible for hunting down, jailing, and killing political opponents. Witness the present-day situation with the establishment of the politically anti-PPP inclined SARU, the use of SOCU for political witch hunting, the use of the Guyana Police Force to harass and arrest activists of the PPP, and the use of the criminal justice system to delay and thus deny justice to the electors of the PPP vis-a-vis the 2015 elections petition. The PPP understands that recently, based on political directives, warrants have been solicited from the court to gain access to bank accounts of former PPP ministers and to carry out searches at their respective places of residence. All of the above are politically inspired and motivated. The PPP has noted the persistent threats by Clive Thomas, the head of SARU, to PPP leaders and former government and state functionaries. The party wishes to remind once again that SARU has no locus standi within the meaning of the Constitution of the Republic, nor the laws of Guyana. Any attempt to use SARU to illegally harm the legitimate economic and financial interests of any PPPC leader and or former government functionaries on the basis of wild, unsubstantiated, and politically motivated allegations of corruption will be stoutly and resolutely rebuffed by the PPP. Attempts by the Granger administration to harass, intimidate, or resort to trumped-up charges against PPP leaders merely to satisfy the Kaicho News, the David Hines of this world, and the revenge-seeking constituents will not succeed. The PPP has the resilience and the experience to ensure that this does not happen. The PPP notes that the Granger administration's use of the socio-psychological tool of fear and deception is becoming more and more prominent with each passing day. The fear of losing one's job, of being watched, of being heard or overheard is mounting more and more among Guyanese. Interestingly, it is this fear that is bringing Guyanese closer and closer together in the mounting opposition to the APNU-AFC's discriminatory and witch hunting practices. And the deceptive mouthings about a good life for all Guyanese, many have come to realize that this will never be realized, but it continues unabated, notwithstanding the decline in living standards of the Guyanese people. Thank you.
There you had the two statements. We'll open to questions. Who will be the first?
I might as well.
Adam?
Sir, are you in a position to say how many retired police officers and soldiers gained job in the public service under the PPP? And sir, you talk about hiring army personnel ahead of civilians. Do you not consider retired army personnel a civilian?
The numbers of persons or the number of persons retired from the GDF, rehired by the PPP, compared to those hired now under the APNU AFC, pales into significance when the numbers are compared, and the frequency with which these appointments are being made. That's number one. Number two, a retired soldier or officer of the Guyana Defense Force is always an officer of the force. I don't want to quote who said that, but I remember just before the elections in May 2015, a prominent individual associated with the sitting president once said that a soldier will always be a soldier, irrespective of the rank. And that is why when signatures are attached to some of these retired, or names are called, whether at a state function or in the National Assembly, you will hear them referring to the rank at which they retired. Now that tells me, and this is an established convention around the world, that once a soldier, always a soldier.
Never a civilian. Therefore, sir, you said the number appointed by the PPP pales into insignificance. You're not saying that the PPP never did
Pales into significance.
insignificance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes insignificant. You're not saying that the PPP never did it.
No, I could never say that because you know that.
So what makes
I am
it-
saying, what I am saying is the numbers that are being appointed now and the frequency with which they're being appointed pales into significance when compared to those that were employed or re-employed by the People's Progressive Party
What makes it wrong?
administration.
What makes it wrong?
What makes, not a question of what makes it wrong, it's the principle. It's the principle. Here you have, in the office of the president, a retired soldier,
You got retired major, retired
Whatever.
colonel, all kinds of things.
I am saying that right now in the office of in the Ministry of the Presidency, you have over 20
Retired
retired Army people working. Right? In addition to that, almost at every commission of inquiry, all of you must have seen it because you're practicing journalists. You're hearing what I'm saying is like I'm speaking to the converted. Because you have read it and you know what the facts are. Recently, in respect to the fire at Garrity the Children, a colonel, retired colonel, was appointed. And so it goes on.
But before
It goes on.
But before that, there was no evidence. You had the president.
Comrade,
Commission of
I'm
Inquiry,
saying-
the head was a judge. You had the Commission of Inquiry into the Ministry of Education. The retiree was a civil servant. As a matter of fact, Windy Algernon is one of the first Army personnel to head a COI. So you're not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What,
namely the
what about the
Algernon.
COI in Takano?
Oh, sorry.
All right, Adam, come, get them. Let me move on.
Comrade, you can't pick and choose on this matter like if you have a bowl of spaghetti in front of you. You are picking what you feel suits your argument in respect of civilian appointees. My emphasis and focus is on the prominence, number one, the numbers, number two, of military and former military persons that are being attached to government agencies and departments. and it's a fact. There's no denying of that. Let's move on.
Once you start something, you can continue.
Next.
The argument.
Well,
Other questions?
Yeah, man. The next one got to do with this GCOM and the exchange of database. Sir, isn't it the norm that if an entity has a capability, for example, in this case GCOM, to gather information, it can share? Is there a law that says GCOM's database is GCOM's database alone?
there are certain stats in GCOM database that are confidential.
Right?
Date of birth. Yes, in the voters list, for example, that is shared with all the voters, with all the political parties, there are a number of details that are taken of an elector, such as the fingerprints, such as the date of birth, and so forth, that are not to be shared with anyone else. If you can find, or if anyone can find for me, the practice in Guyana or a previous experience in Guyana where GCOM's database was taken in its entirety and shared with government agencies and departments, I will be happy to see it.
Adam, just add what the GS said there just now. GCOM database that they used at the last election is public on their website. So why the Education Ministry and GCOM wants the website at GCOM, or the database, sorry, at GCOM? So you could see the motives.
But it don't make sense. If it is public.
Yeah, but there are certain fields that the GS explained that are confidential, that are not on the website,
Like what?
which will be shared. You mention
Comrade,
it.
why are you asking us that? Why don't you
Yes,
check?
I check, I know. My date of birth is on the GCOM website.
No, but your fingerprint. The other thing, distinguish mark.
The date of birth of the voters of every elector is on the voters list.
It's on the GCOM website.
Your fingerprints are there.
No, my fingerprint is not there.
Or other biometrics are there.
No.
Yeah, my height.
No.
I think my height is
No,
there.
Man, don't guess
It's
this
not
thing,
there.
comrade.
Wait. Homeland Security uses the database from immigration.
Which Homeland Security?
U.S. Homeland Security.
Well, we in Guyana. Don't worry with US right now.
But you're not an island.
Pardon?
You're not an island.
We have our own laws here.
But the law doesn't prevent.
We have
from
our own
sharing.
laws here. Why are you shifting the goalpost, Mr. Harris? Here in Guyana, we have what is called the Representation of the People's Act. The elections in this country and the register of registrants is determined by certain rules and procedures and laws that are peculiar to our country. This question of linking what we have here, what is in the United States right now, I wouldn't venture there, because I don't really know much about that.
Next. Questions? Yes.
Sir, you mentioned in your opening statement the warrants were solicited to search some people members' bank accounts and what's not. Were you prepared to identify them?
Identify who?
The persons who you're searching, their account. You
The
said
que-
warrants were solicited to search certain key people members'
Yeah.
bank accounts and what's not. I'm asking if you're prepared to identify these people.
No, because we don't know who are they. We don't know who the warrants are issued in whose names. But we know that that the courts have been approached for warrants to access the bank accounts of PPP members, as well as to search their homes. That's what we know.
None of the ones been received.
I can't say. I can't say. That's for you to find out.
Who is your source?
Who what?
Or what is your source?
What is our source? I can't reveal our source. Do you reveal your sources?
You're making a claim.
Yes, but I'm free to make a claim, but I'm not free to reveal my sources.
Next, let's move on.
Do these ministers have anything to hide in their bank accounts? Any likely untoward deposits? that
I
might
can't
raise
answer that question.
How will you?
I can't answer that question.
How will
But
you?
me?
Yeah,
If I have anything to hide? No, I don't have anything tied. Why would I have anything tied?
Could this be linked to the...
I don't know, comrade. You got to ask Soku that question. Call Mr. Sidney James and ask him. You're asking me questions which, as a politician, I can't answer. You got to answer the operatives. Call Sidney James or call Clive Thomas. These are the two persons who are behind this activity.
Was the one case through Soku or Guyana Revenue Authority?
I can't say. I can't say.
Would you deny GRA the right to seek such warrants?
What is that?
Would you deny GRA?
I am not in a position to approve or deny.
Any other question on the statements? Any other questions? Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
No other
back to-
question off statement?
Well, statements, yeah, off statements. You all have question off statements?
By the way, I noticed that Mr. Felix has been giving his mouth a lot of liberty. As the Guyanese would say, running his mouth, like the Kaitri News usually does, in respect of passports and the times, the length of time it takes to issue a passport and so on. You know, it's amazing to hear people like Mr. Felix. I mean, I could understand that coming from an ordinary mortal in Guyana who don't really follow these things. But it's really amazing to hear a person like Mr. Felix saying the things that he's saying as though he's totally oblivious to the significant steps that were taken by the PBPC administration to improve. One, we introduced issuing of passport by electronic means. We are the ones that introduced that. And the mere fact that passports were introduced to be electronically generated was in an effort to do away with the issuance of false passports, because we had a lot of that going on during that time. Thousands of passports were being issued falsely and stolen because everything was being done by hand. The PBP introduced electronically generated passports, number one. Number two, that act by its very nature reduced the amount of time a person had to wait for a passport. We moved it from 1 month to 1 week, and we were already moving to bring it down from 1 week to 3 or 4 days. So all this, what I'm hearing from Mr. Felix, is actually trying to spin truth into untruth. The whole question of opening or establishing passport issuing offices in various parts of the country and modernizing the equipment, that was done under the PVPC as well. And I sat in the parliament and heard Mr. Felix bring at least 3 times requests for money for the same equipment which we had ordered from CBN in Canada. He refuses to reveal the nature of the equipment that they're now procuring. He refuses to reveal the company for which they are procuring this equipment. He refuses to reveal the procurement process, whether it was sole sourcing or otherwise, through which these equipments are being procured. He is saying things which we already knew, that to establish passport issuing offices in the various regions of the country is open to interference and threats of different sorts. It's not an easy thing. So I think at some point in time, the administration will come to recognize the same challenges that we recognized when we were there with respect to issuing of passports in various parts of the country electronically, as it is being done right now here in Georgetown. But if they want to make this a political football and to appear to people that they are doing things which we never contemplated doing, and to use a lot of political arguments that we don't know what we're talking about and so forth, well, I would reduce that merely to political mischief. But the facts speak for themselves, and anyone who wishes to have a good appreciation of the evolution of issuing of passports in Guyana should go into the archives and they will see. But if you want to start from now, if you want to start understanding this problem or this evolution from today's date, you obviously will go wrong, because then you will be doing that out of the historical context in which this situation and this matter was addressed.
Just before we close, I want to extend an invitation to the media this afternoon. The People's Progressive Party, and in conjunction with the British High Commission, have a lecture at Red House at 4:30, right? 4:30, where the GS and the British High Commissioner will be speaking about the British removal from the EU and the impact on Guyana.
Before you rise, I don't want it to be recorded as though I'm complaining, because I know sometimes it's the way it is put, that I'm complaining. But over the weekend, the party issued two important statements. One on the killing of the 84 persons in Nice, in France, and another one in relation to the Turkey attempted coup. We've noticed that none of the media houses have published these statements. These are statements that are coming from the PPP, but I've seen them reflect Mr. Granger and others signing a book of condolence in respect to the same matter for which we issued a statement. Now, if you want to be fair and balanced in our reporting, we should not, I respectfully submit, ignore statements of this type, which are not to do with Guyanese politics. We're talking about two incidents that are of a humanitarian nature, which saw the killing of citizens of the world. And we consider it our duty, as we have done historically, to pronounce on such matters. But it is disappointing. Again, I'm not complaining, because I don't want to see the headline, Brody complains.
And then tomorrow we have a picketing at GCOM, right? Continue picketing.